The D-Day is getting closer and closer. Just over 2 weeks to go for the union budget.
That's right. In our run-up to the union budget, we've got with us Mohandas Pai to give us a perspective of his expectations and will the FM deliver. Mr. Mohandas Pai, thanks very much. Always appreciate your time and your views. This budget, will it be one that will change things for India, given that we find ourselves at a very challenging roadmap ahead, thanks to elections and the economic scenario?
Well, I think the most important objective for the finance minister should be fiscal consolidation. After the elections in UP and considering the global situation, India's fisc has gone out of control. The fiscal deficit may be about 5.5% to 6%. Revenues are not coming up, expenditures going up. There's a huge amount of unpaid bills. Borrowings are very, very high and hurting the economy. So my expectation is that the finance minister should focus on fiscal consolidation. He must try to cut spending.
Mohandas Pai, what about ways to increase revenues? Everyone's turning to service tax. What do you expect the FM to do? Will he widen the service tax net, look at a negative list, or would he even look at increasing the service tax rate?
Well, I think if you look at service tax collection, he obviously will expand the number of items subject to service tax. He's been talking about it. He may come out with a negative list, and that is not at all bad for the economy. I don't expect him to increase excise duty. I expect him to increase the initial slab for individual income tax. And I hope that he'll bring in simplification of tax rules so that higher compliance will come, because this will increase buoyancy. But I think he should focus on cutting spending. There are a lot of areas where he can cut spending to make spending much more effective, much more targeted. Subsidies are going out of control, while most subsidies have an objective. Subsidies on fuel, subsidies on, let's say, exports, and subsidies in some areas can easily be cut.
What about ways to improve revenues? I'm coming back to that point, because disinvestment was another, avenue, and that's kind of fallen through in FY12 as well, unlikely to do much better in FY13. Do you think the government needs to build on other streams for funds?
Well, I think divestment does not work because the government is very slow to take decisions and the markets have not been good. I would expect that quite possibly he will announce right now that he's going to clear divestment in some stock. But I would expect that he will ask the public sector to pay out much more dividends. The public sector has got about 2.5 lakh crores of cash between about 10 to 12 companies. And I don't see why they cannot pay maybe 50,000 to 75,000 crores as dividend, so the government gets a lot of money without having to divest. I find it very funny that these companies are accumulating a lot of cash without paying out huge dividends which they can, and that will get him much more money easily rather than going through the process of divestment. So I would expect some innovative things to happen by the finance minister in the budget.
But only if we would see innovation and if the PSUs would be agreeable to that idea. Mr. Pai, what announcements could we expect in a sector that you've been, that's the technology space, given the expiry of the STPI?
Today, despite the government having a SEZ policy which allows some tax benefits, which in the income tax department disallow companies from enjoying the benefit, saying they're not SEZs at all, contrary to facts, adding back huge amounts of income as additions, saying that they're doing body shopping, they're not doing technology absurd. These are all absurd things that they do. Even in transfer pricing, huge additions have taken place in the technology sector. I only hope he takes a reasonable view and clarifies the law on all these issues so that whatever benefits are available under current tax policy, let companies enjoy the benefit. If not, just remove those benefits and let us stop this charade of income tax officers adding back to deny them the benefits despite the law allowing the benefits.
Interesting out there, as you said, that there's a bit of a double-edged sword involved when it comes to SOPs or the lack of it. Mr. Pai, you've been a proponent for some time now about improving education and, of course, ensuring food for all. Now, from a budget standpoint, the big idea this time around is that the food security bill could potentially see some serious attention. There are question marks and apprehensions on how the finance minister will balance the fisc with such an outgo. But you think that might really get through, the food security bill?
I think hunger is the biggest challenge that India faces in the social sector. We all know the statistics that 45% of our children below the age of 5 suffer from undernourishment. And I think that needs to be addressed, and for that food security is very important. I would expect him to fund the food security bill much more and go ahead with that. It may cost 30,000 crores. But I expect him to cut subsidies in some other areas, particularly fuel. There's no reason why diesel should be subsidized. I don't see why they should collect taxes on diesel and petrol and give it money back as subsidy to oil companies. He can as well reduce the taxes and say that, look, I'm reducing the taxes, increase the price, and let's do away with subsidy on diesel and petrol and possibly reduce the subsidy on kerosene. And I would expect him to fund food security more rather than give subsidies on fuel.
Mohandas Pai, final word from you. Given the fact that this last 12 months have been really tough for the government, many believe that the Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee will be under pressure to come up with a populist budget. What do you think?
Well, I would expect him to make things much simpler overall. And I don't have great expectations from this budget because the flexibility for the finance minister is very little. Like I said earlier, the fiscal deficit is going out of control. Spending is going out of control. There's a limitation to the quantum of tax that he can take from people. And overall, I think his flexibility is very limited. He may do some small things. But I would appreciate if he focus on fiscal consolidation, he reduces the fiscal deficit and reduces borrowing. Because today, he's borrowing 4,50,000 crores every year. And the interest payment on that is beginning to be so high that there's almost going to be no flexibility, where we are in danger of entering into a debt trap.
Debt trap, big warning out there as Mohandas Pai joins us with the perspective on the budget expectations. Always a pleasure. Thanks very much for being with us from Bangalore.